welcome to my live, which I hope Zana of Strong Nutrients will be able to join me on in a few minutes. I'm just getting it all in. Actually done a live or hosted a live in 2024. So welcome. I hope you'll learn something today about the incredibly important role cortisol plays in our systems and how important it is to actually keep those levels at a good, keep them balanced. So hello, Zana. I can see you've joined. I'm just waiting for it to pop up here. What is going on? Hi.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm fine. Those first few seconds, I'm starting like, but I do have your chill pill.
Well done.
And I did actually have one before I joined earlier on. So I'm so delighted to see you. First of all, happy 2024. I know we're in February already, but
I know, God, we are in February, nearly the second half of February. Yes, but happy 2024. Indeed.
I know. And okay, it's a very grey day, so I've got a lot of artificial light to try and spruce things up today. We are going to talk about the importance of cortisol today, because I mean, I had my experience with it last year, and with it being exceptionally spiked all the time, and then eventually having that crash afterwards, because your body can't run like that all the time. And I thought, well, you are the best person to speak to about this, because I know that on our last live, I learned things about magnesium that I didn't know. I just thought you take magnesium for a decent night's sleep. I had no idea how vital it is with so many different functions in the body. So today I'm hoping that what we did with magnesium in our last live, we're going to do with cortisol levels.
We can shed some light on it. We can shed some light. Yes, yes. Okay, yes, indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's kick off.
I think, should we kick off with what it's supposed to do with the fight or flight game? Because otherwise it's easy to think of cortisol then as being bad, but obviously it's not bad. No, to my knowledge, and I can be corrected here, I'm not a doctor, just to be very clear to anyone listening, I'm not a doctor. I am a nutritionist and a trainer, but I deal with a lot of the health aspects of hormonally related issues, quite frankly. So just with cortisol, it's not necessarily a bad thing. One of the things cortisol does is it gets us out of bed in the morning. It gives us the get up and go. And if you were in danger, it's the adrenaline and the cortisol, those two stress hormones that potentially save your life. They have an impact on all of your body's functioning. So you kind of take all the energy out of all the areas you don't need it at that particular point in time, from the digestive system and everything else, and gets them into the limbs, gets it into the heart, so your heart rate goes up, and it helps everything. Pupils dilate, you see more clearly. Basically, everything changes, so you have the power to fight or run. So you get this almost like a superhuman hit, if you like. So it's great at the right time, at the right place, and the right man, so on and so forth. And we all know what the fight or flight, I mean, I think everybody will have heard this at this stage. All very well a few thousand years ago, when it was just an animal that might be attacking you, or dare I say another human perhaps, where you fought or ran. But now it tends to happen with emails pinging at nighttime, texts coming through. You know, it's like it's a constant underlying stress that occurs and just keeps going. So you can end up with this cortisol, which is designed, and I did deliberately said that, it's designed to take energy away, if you like, from things that aren't essential in that moment in time, including digestion. So it's like it pulls its resources out of there and pushes the circulation into other areas. And in turn, that can have a big knock-on effect, obviously, in the long term with what's happening in our body from a health point of view, if it's going for too long. Simply put, one of the things cortisol does, just as an aside, and we'll talk about this later, but just to throw it in at the beginning, is it does help the body attack muscle and glycogen stores to access sugar, which is great if you need quick energy. It's like a quick hit to do what you need to do in the fight or the run. Unfortunately, though, if you don't fight something or you don't run away, that sugar is running around the bloodstream and needs to get taken out. So the body releases insulin to get that sugar out. And ultimately that'll get converted as belly fat, quite frankly. So it goes off the muscle onto the belly, and the body will then release ghrelin on the back of the insulin, which makes you hungry and crave. So there's a few things that occur, but we'll come back to that one later. I'm just throwing that one in at the beginning because that does make a difference. Understanding that process and what can be happening when we're stressed. But yes, that's the overview. I'll stop.
Right. So I was doing a little bit of research. I mean, just because I actually asked people, I mean, do you know what cortisol is? And a lot of people said, well, they've heard of it, but they don't know what it is. It is our stress hormone, as you said. It is created in the 2 adrenal glands above the kidneys. Listen to me.
No, you're getting it. You're getting it. Yes.
Totally in there. And as you say, we actually do need it because it helps us to get up in the morning. This is, if it's on a normal balance, it helps us to get up because that's when the levels are high. And then, of course, when the levels are low, we tend to go to sleep. Now, there are a lot of people I've spoken to who wake up suddenly at 3 o'clock, and they have this habit of waking up at 3 o'clock. And so that is your cortisol level. That's like, for some reason, is
very
being fired up.
Yeah, it's being fired up. And that's exactly it. You don't want it firing up consistently throughout the day into the evening or during the night. You don't want it firing up too early at night. It will influence blood sugar levels and all sorts of things. And obviously it's what keeps you awake. It's like a caffeine shot. To me, cortisol and caffeine, now they're not the same thing, just to be clear, but in my head, I see them as the same thing. You can have a cortisol hit or you can have a caffeine hit. Neither are brilliant for the adrenals if you have too much of it. And equally in small amounts can give you that lift and drive.
Well, I have to say, from what I noticed last year, because I've always been one of those people who thrived on running on adrenaline, and I'd be like, you know, I can do this, and I'd be almost delighted that I was busy. And you know, it becomes a habit, but actually that is genuinely bad. You're not supposed to be busy and running at that level all the time, because eventually that has this effect on everything. And
yes.
then you have this craving for sugar, and as we've spoken, I am a sugar fanatic. I would rather drink, and I know this is awful to say, I don't do it anymore, but I'd rather drink a Coca-Cola than a glass of wine. Not good. And also, as I said to you, is that if I got stressed, I would eat peanut M&Ms, like, or potentially, like other people would potentially smoke a cigarette, because it's that stress factor. And as that happens slowly but surely, because there is all this insulin running around, that is why you suddenly develop it around your waist. And that is really also for women who are perimenopausal, that is exactly where it's going to end up going.
Yeah, so on that note, because this is important just to tie a few factors here together. So exactly that, perimenopausal, menopausal women, and dare I say men going through andropause, which is a similar scenario for men, as those hormonal levels shift and change, your insulin levels can rise, and that can cause that midlife belly kind of thing, that tire, effectively. Any weight around the middle is your body releasing too much insulin. And that can obviously be from the very basic factor of just eating too much sugar. It can be from the perimenopause, menopause, and it can be from excess cortisol. And obviously if you've all three going on, then you're in trouble. Yeah. The thing with the adrenal glands, which I find quite fascinating and often doesn't get mentioned, I don't think it gets mentioned enough, is they produce almost half of our steroid hormones. So our testosterone, our progesterone, and our estrogen, almost half of them are produced in the adrenal glands, not in the ovaries or the testicles for the men, so to speak, but actually in the adrenals. So if the adrenals are on an overdrive, and we're already going through perimenopause and menopause where our natural hormone levels are maybe beginning to drop or fluctuate, we've lost a major engine, if you like, our production line of those hormones that could be backing us up, if you like. And so then you can end up with worse menopausal symptoms as well, to boot.
So it's kind of, and that is counterproductive, because you're trying to protect yourself from osteoporosis. And I believe that if you have high levels of cortisol constantly, it can actually lead to osteoporosis. You're trying to maintain your muscle mass because you're losing your muscle mass, whereas this can actually, it takes away from the muscle. So you have
I think you've said a very good point there. So just to clarify on that point, there's a couple of things happening in that. Cortisol, its job is to get access. I mean, it's got multiple jobs, but one of the big ones is to get you the fuel into the bloodstream so you can fight or run. And it does that. One of the ways it does that is by breaking down your lean body mass. So usually it's glycogen stores, but then it's into muscle stores, but that can have a knock-on effect of protein in bones as well. It can have a knock-on effect right the way through. So protein, your lean body mass breaks down into amino acids, which are the lovely building blocks of you, and sugars. So it's trying to get the sugars. So not only does excess cortisol lead to potentially excess belly fat, because the sugars go to the bloodstream, the body releases the insulin, and so on and so forth. It used to get described to us when I was studying nutrition as a lemon on toothpicks. The body, think of the shape of a lemon, and toothpicks for arms and toothpicks for legs.
Right.
In other words, the cortisol's breaking down your muscle, the very essential lean body mass that holds you together, and we need more of as we age, because there's natural sarcopenia going on. As we get older, we naturally lose our lean body mass. Cortisol is breaking it down faster, and then all of that ultimately gets converted into fat around the belly. So it's exactly what you don't want.
Yeah,
exactly what you don't want.
But it's interesting to me, because when I was reading up on this, I can actually see, because it peaked for me at the end of November. And just for anyone watching, I did actually land up in hospital at the end of November. Well, you know, my system just like kind of switched off. And but if I look back at photographs, because I was gaining weight, but I wasn't actually eating to gain that weight.
Yes.
It was happening.
Yes.
And if I look at myself then, and because I'm taking photographs of myself all the time, I can see it was face. So it was my face was much rounder, and where it goes, and my belly, and and I've never carried weight on my belly.
Yeah.
And also interestingly on my back, and apparently that is definitely a sign of
the middle. It's the whole middle. Yeah. That whole section.
There wasn't anything that I could do. I mean, you know, and it was stressing me out even more. So, yeah.
Of course it was. Of course it was. And then because you get the ghrelin, this hormone that runs in after the insulin, because of the insulin rise due to the sugar levels in the bloodstream increasing, you have the ghrelin after it, which gets you craving. So now you're going to eat sugars to try and settle it all down. And of course, that makes the spiral way worse again.
Yeah.
And mood, everything's going to get affected with that. Everything's going to get affected, because sugar's a drug effectively. It has a similar impact on the dopamine and the likes as a drug has. So now you've become a drug addict to boot.
It's not good. Well, I know you mentioned mood as well, because obviously that is something in perimenopause that we are trying to always keep our moods level. But that is also something that I noticed then. I was around people, I was constantly anxious. I mean, really. And actually, eventually, I was having persistent panic attacks, and they just get worse and worse and worse. And it is amazing. Your body will create situations where you either think you're about to have a stroke because of the headaches, or you're having a heart attack or whatever else. Find anything in its power to just kind of get you to rest and calm and slow.
It's on a complete fight or flight overdrive effectively. It really is.
And you just cannot be in that situation all the time, because eventually things are going to stop.
Well, as I said at the very beginning, and I said that one deliberately, one of the jobs is to take away from the daily essentials, like say digestion. The circulation moves away from that into the fight or flight. So suddenly you'll find you're not digesting food properly, or you're getting stomach issues, and so on and so forth. And then of course you're not going to get the nourishment into the system. Your heart rate's going too high all the time, because that's the job with the cortisol, and that's not good for an extended period. So you get the idea. Yes, you won't be getting the oxygen in quite the right way. You'll almost be potentially hyperventilating. Now, no, we're saying this is a terrible negative run, but that's the extreme of what can happen. Yes. And if you combine it with the perimenopause or menopausal symptoms, where a touch of that, it can lean towards that anyway, then you really have a double whammy. One thing I found fascinating when I discovered this was how progesterone is essential for making up cortisol. I hadn't realized that. So if you're under stress and your body has to now produce cortisol to kind of deal with this, it could be using up particularly when we're going through this phase in life, those precious progesterone levels of that hormone to kind of create it, and that'll throw your sleep out the window, which is obviously going to make the whole cycle worse. So if the cortisol too high, the progesterone too low. Now, as I said, I'm not a doctor, so anyone who wants to row in who is a hormonal doctor that can actually understand this further, but that bit is enough to make you kind of take pause and think. You don't want to be letting those stress levels get super high, particularly at this time in life, particularly now.
Exactly. And I think when we spoke yesterday in preparation for today, one of the main things that I think both of us agree with is that it's about longevity. It's about looking after your system in a way that, you know, if you're here in however many years, if we're lucky enough, we want to be able to be mobile, we want to have our strength, and it's about having a good quality of life for as long as you possibly can. So it's about understanding these things so that you can maintain them and do what is necessary so that, you know, you're not stripping your body of what you need or putting on weight where you don't need it, because that's the most dangerous area, really.
It's exactly that. It's not about, as we were saying yesterday, this is not about weight loss per se at all. This is because actually you lose muscle weight when you're under stress, or you can do, and you just don't want to do that. This is about aiming to keep the fat levels around the middle as low as you can, because that is a sign of health or not, so to speak. And at the same time, protecting precious lean body and muscle mass, bone density. Exactly that. So you have this strength, as exactly as you say, and the longevity. 100%.
So the question is, what can we do about it? Because I mean, I did have medical intervention for a week afterwards, and then went back to a very normal and very healthy. I was very quiet over December for very good reason, and increased my protein intake and was really adamant about my sleep and totally reduced my sugar levels. Like that, my children didn't even recognize me. Because I was the snacker in the house, and I did drop considerable amount, but it was from those particular areas, and I was shocked because I wasn't effectively doing anything like physical or dieting or anything like that, but I was making very proper health choices in terms of what I ate and when I ate, and then no snacking, no sugars and things like that. And but it was the mental element as well. My concentration levels went up, my sleep was better, my energy levels, oh my gosh, that went through the roof again. And again I felt like myself. So it's amazing. It was over a very short period of time. With those changes. So
well, the first thing I'd recommend people do is, from a nutritional side of things, to make it easy on yourself. When you're stressed, the last thing you probably want to do is go on a strict diet. So rather than just saying I'm going to give up sugar, because that can almost make the whole thing harder, I would just recommend get the protein intake up. Just increase the protein, because then at least the body might stop attacking your precious reserves that's in your own lean body mass and will use the protein you're taking in. It will make you feel much fuller. It's not going to spike the insulin in the same way at all. So you'll begin to reset, almost at least get the sugar balance back a little bit in the bloodstream, if that makes sense. So get the protein in, and that almost naturally helps with reducing the sugar levels. So it's not a case of cutting out more than add in. I have to say, sorry, I'm going to mention it here. The casein protein that we sell in Strong, I think is brilliant, because it takes very little for people to have to do it. It's a bigger tub. You probably have it there somewhere. We can go together, but it's a bigger one. Yes. Well, the reason I like that is it's a very slow release protein, which means it breaks down really slowly. So you don't get an insulin spike from it. So whey protein, sometimes you can get an insulin spike, but with the casein, you really don't. You stay fuller for so much longer, and you're far less likely to crave. So it's both nourishing and recovering all the lean body mass, but it's curbing that need for the sugars. So that on its own will start making a difference, not just to the shape, but to how you feel. And make no mistake, those neurotransmitters that everyone talks about, you know, from the dopamine, the serotonin, all of these things that help us feel better, they're made up of amino acids too. In other words, part of the amino acids are the building blocks of the protein. You need the protein in for all of these. You really do. So the faster you can get that blood sugar level stabilized just through nutrition, the better. So protein, Fats are fantastic. They're the only food group that do not cause the body to raise insulin at all. So pure fat has no impact on sugar levels in the bloodstream as such. No sugar will come from it. You'll have no insulin rise. So everything from avocados to nuts to your olive oils, all of that, don't worry. I would almost say don't worry about how much you're eating, just change what it is you're eating. The no snacking is massive, particularly I think for energy. Now, I often say this, and I won't keep using this story, but I still smile at this story. When I started Strong Nutrients up in the very early days, and I was kind of ordering supplements from manufacturers once you'd found who was doing what, and if I was looking for something in a bit of a hurry, I used to say to them, well, can you just send me 50 containers and then send the rest later? Yeah. And in my innocence, I thought this was an easy task. And of course, I think that at best, they laughed at me on the other side of the phone. At worst, there were probably other words going on, but at best they laughed. Because as they explained, they have to clear down entire machines. If you can imagine these big production lines, everything needs to get cleared, cleaned, sanitized, and ready for the next load. So whether it was 50 containers of 50,000 or 500,000 made no difference to them. The same work went into it. Your digestive system is the same. Whether it's 5 blueberries, 50 blueberries, or a big meal, you still have to work your digestive system from the mouth right the way down through your body, and that's going to take up energy. Yeah. You can have a sugar spike from those blueberries or that little sugar snack, and that piece of chocolate, you'll have all the digestive system will kick in. You'll get the insulin surge, you'll get the ghrelin hit afterwards. So everything is happening and you'll have got nothing for it. There's no bang for your buck. So eat meals. If you need to eat 6 times a day, eat 6 times a day, but let them be meals, not random snacks. Yeah. And that changes everything.
Well, that is really true, because over December, because I was aware that I was eating so little protein, so I increased my protein, and I was sitting down and I was having a proper meal. So I mean, one of my favorite ways to start the day: scrambled eggs, some avocados, some tomatoes, and a slice of toast. And that would be my sort of morning, and it would just last. Yes. So, but I was eating much more, and yet
you were losing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, the more protein you eat, weirdly, often the smaller you'll get, but you won't lose. It won't be your lean body mass, which is imperative, but you'll find your size can drop. Yeah. It's quite fascinating. Yes.
And it's all about, but it's about maintaining it, and then obviously having the strength, because when you're in 20 years' time, you want to be able to lift yourself off the loo.
You'd like to be able to do even more again, but yes, 100%. Yes.
But the one thing, the second I stopped snacking, I stopped snacking. Like, I stopped needing that pit. And I think that one thing that is really important, and that I noticed, is you do have to tackle the reason why you're having those stress attacks. So there's, so I had particular times in the day when I would like go a little bit crazy and anxious, and that would be when I'd be reaching for some M&Ms or something like crisps or whatever it was, and it's usually like, say, 5 till 6, which they always call the witching hour if you're a mum.
Yeah.
And then there was like the 11 o'clock, 11 C's, and it's something you need to dunk a biscuit.
Yeah.
So stopped having those things in the house. Wow, my shopping bill suddenly reduced from snacks. But also I tackled the reasons why those were happening, and then so it all kind of like fits together,
It very much does. And I think that's a really interesting one, without going into that side too much, because I think that's alive all on its own, like genuinely now, but not dismissing it all. I think there's so much in that, and I think in my experience working with clients, if you can catch 2 sides at the same time, you'll really win. And by that I mean, if your cortisol is really high and everything is sort of on that kind of the adrenaline and on that right in the middle of fight or flight, it's very hard to get your brain to calm down. And what I find is, particularly now this goes, I'm sure, for people across the board, particularly women of a certain age that are used to juggling about 50 things, they feel they should know better and be able to deal with this. And dare I say, Instagram doesn't help, because it makes you think like you should know better and be able to deal with this, and it's nonsense. If that adrenaline cortisol is way on an overdrive, If the hormonal balance of the estrogen, testosterone, progesterone is all out of kilter, it's almost impossible for you to get that space to go, hang on, what's happening here? So if you can kind of get that side balanced and then look at what's happening here, then you can do it. And as I said, that smallest thing, the way you did it, which was up the protein, get some fats in, stop the snacking. It doesn't sound like much, but you'll begin to feel a little bit more like yourself. And then you can kind of go, okay, I've got a breather here. Now let me look at, why is this happening? And you've got a different motivation or power behind you to do it.
Well, I think it's what we spoke about yesterday was that for me, I've always been able to handle stress, and it's all fine whilst you're very good at juggling the balls and you're like, you're fine. And then more gets thrown in, because we, in my age group, we are the sandwich situation, or the generation where we're looking after often children and elderly parents. And if you have a situation where too many things happen that are extremely stressful in your life, but your body isn't prepared for it, that's when the danger happens. Because it's all fine. You know, you're going along perfectly, you're very stressed, you're very good at dealing with stress. But when it all happens at once, that's when things shift. And I think that's what we need to kind of prepare ourselves for. Like, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but if things go bad, is your body ready? You know, have you
exactly. Well, it's thinking in terms of nutrition for your body right now. What does it need right now? And that's the big one. And I think it's not spoken about enough, in that we go, this is the perfect diet, this is what to do, you know, and we kind of throw these generalizations out rather than thinking, right now, my stage in life, what's probably happening anyway. Once we hit our 40s and 50s, we're naturally losing our muscle mass or lean body mass, which means all of our strength, testosterone levels and the things that give us our drive are naturally dropping potentially as well. And so all the things that would have held us up naturally in our 20s and 30s are beginning to diminish anyway. And then we're going and taking on way more than we would have in our 20s. If we gave half of what we do to our 20-year-old self, we'd probably crumble.
They'd be like, I can't deal with this.
I'm not doing that. Mom. If you get it. So we're doubling up the load while our bodies are in a different phase. And it doesn't mean our bodies can't deal with it. It doesn't mean you can't, so to speak. It might mean you can't. So maybe, and that's again another conversation you have to look at. But you do need to feed your body differently. Very much so. Very much need to nourish it in a completely different way.
Well, I guess you wouldn't put diesel into a petrol car. And I think if you want your car to run correctly, you need to feed it correctly. And at the 40s, 50s or perimenopausal, there is a particular way of feeding it to prevent things like muscle loss, osteoporosis, and everything else. And then, and also, you know, to take into account that your cortisol levels aren't so high that you end up in a...
And while we're mentioning that, if I may mention one more thing when it comes to cortisol, overtraining, that's a disaster. And I'm not saying everyone does it. Some people don't train enough, and I get that one. Undertraining is one, and undertraining doesn't help either, because exercise impacts those neurotransmitters, which make us happy and make us calm. So we need some. Too much you can literally have too much cortisol then going on. You start breaking down more muscle, and you can make the whole scenario worse. So some people kind of think, right, I'm just going to train and that'll clear my head, which in moderation, 100%. Too much, and you could be making it worse. You could be exasperating it. So that's another thing to be aware of, that there's a happy medium with exercise as well. Some is needed, definitely. Too much.
A daily dose. I mean, getting your steps in every day, but yeah, we need to be doing the actual weight bearing.
Weight bearing. You know, weight resistance training, weight bearing exercise. Yep, that one. The short, high intensity works, but short being the operative word in that one, not the kind of hour-long classes, but kind of more 15, 20 minutes. 15 minutes is even enough. Bursts of high intensity can make a big difference to insulin levels. And if you think about it, high intensity training, I think, particularly if you can keep it short, mimics the fight or flight. So I always like to think of it as it soaks up all those stress hormones. Boxing, sprinting, like that's, if you think about it, that's what that is. And you're using them all up, and then and then you stop, so the body has maximum time to recover. And it kind of gets everything, I think, calmed down again.
That would actually work perfectly for me, because I'd be like panicked that I have to now go work out.
Yeah.
Then I have to work out.
You just do a short burst, even if it's only 5 minutes sprint up the road and back again. That would be enough, and it just kind of gets all done right. We've used up those sugar levels in the bloodstream, that the cortisol is kicked in, and everything kind of resets. And high intensity training and weight training has been shown to help stabilize insulin levels, so bring them back down again. Not the longer duration ones. Now, I'm not saying they don't, but the research was done on the shorter or the resistance training ones. That makes a big difference. So yes, so in the nutritional side, as you mentioned, protein in, and that's where I love the protein shakes. I think they're very helpful. Snacking out, fats can come in, and get the sugars down. Out would be perfection, but down, definitely. And that really makes a difference. It really does. Yeah.
So in terms of, if you were looking at this, because I'm still, so how much protein are we supposed to be getting in?
Oh, I love this question.
Honestly, I can't get my head around it.
This is I'm going to start this with, I'm smiling as I say this. I am being slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I'm starting this with a disclaimer, which it really does depend on what stage you are in life, what you're trying to achieve, what the goal is and the outcome, and so on and so forth, whether you're male, female, your height, all of these things.
Yeah.
But ignoring that for the moment, the general rule of thumb is around about 1.2, 1.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, to be honest, some would say it should be 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And there's some that might even say more. But to give you the overview, now we mean actual protein, as in real protein, as opposed to the pure protein, as opposed to the food. Yeah. So for example, a good fillet steak might have 25 grams of protein in 100 grams. An egg will have maybe about 7, maybe 8 grams in a good medium egg of protein. 100 grams of lentils has about 11 grams. So just to kind of, that's what you're tracking back to. So if you weigh 60 kilograms, and we're looking at, say, okay, now I have to do the maths quickly in my head, 1.2. So if it was 1 to be 60 grams, 1.2 I think is 72 grams, I think. And 72 grams of pure protein a day if you weigh 60 kg.
Right.
So you have to map that through your day. So it's more than most people think. So your 2 eggs in the morning would give you about 15 grams. So
I know. I was going with that and thinking, well, I'm fine.
Your 15 grams, yeah. And say you have 150 grams of salmon, that should give you about 30 grams. So your evening salmon and your 2 eggs in the morning now gives you, what we said there, that's about 46 grams. So you've still got a way to go.
Yeah. So
you kind of, you can figure it out. Now this is where protein shakes come in, because people often ask, should I take a protein shake? No, not necessarily. You don't need protein shakes. You can eat food, and there's lots of really good protein foods out there. Cheese is great. Oh gosh, cottage cheese is fantastic. Eggs are fantastic, but they are very handy. So if you take a scoop, say, for example, of that casein, for example, you've got 30 grams of protein in one hit.
Yeah.
So that's a really fast way. And if you get that 4 o'clock dip, just have a protein shake, then it curbs all of the cravings, it stabilizes everything, it carries you through, but there's 30 grams of protein straight up. And if you're trying to get 72 grams in a day, now you only need 42. That becomes now quite doable. You've done it in your eggs and your salmon, if you like. So that's where protein shakes are super helpful, but not essential. There's so many other ways to do it as such. But that gives you the overview.
Because I have to say, I'm one of those people that I've been asked, do you like tea or coffee? And I said, well, yes, but it must come with a biscuit. Yeah. I'm not interested.
Yes.
So I probably wouldn't drink tea or coffee, but at 11 o'clock, and I get up at like 5. So by 11 o'clock, I need something. And it gives you that, there's a sweetness in it. And, so it covers quite a few, if that's your 11, if you're like me and at 11 o'clock, something that helps a lot.
It helps, it covers it. Yeah, it definitely does.
Now, in terms of protein, because I have a husband that works out like ridiculously, so you would think I was different. He always has his protein shakes after he's had a
Okay.
workout.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's different lines of thought for that. And I think, again, it depends a little bit on what your outcome is. If you're doing short bursts of high intensity training, if you're doing weight training, also with a view to really decrease belly fat, so you want the insulin to stay lovely and steady, then I would avoid anything of food value for at least an hour either side, if not 2 hours either side.
Okay.
Because, yeah, now this is because if you eat something, you're going to have a little bit of an insulin rise, even if it's a protein shake, definitely if it's an energy drink. Yeah. And high intensity training and weight training have this lovely impact on hormones such as growth hormone and all sorts of the other kind of steroid type hormones. Naturally, when we say steroid hormones, people often duck. That just means your testosterone, your estrogen, your progesterone, those kind of. But it has a lovely impact on hormones, particularly ones that push protein back into the body, like the muscle, and firms you up, tones you up, and seems to stabilize and target the insulin, so therefore the belly fat drops. But if you have something of food value, like a protein shake or an energy drink, that can stop that natural growth hormone release. So you can lose the benefit of the hormonal hit. Now, you won't lose the benefit of the circulation improving and hitting the muscle. Yeah. So there's still benefits, but you lose that benefit. If you're trying to build muscle faster, then there may be an argument to having the protein shake quite quickly afterwards. If you're doing a longer training session, then I think you need it, because when I said earlier, if you overtrain, you can eat into more muscle than your body's capable of recovering. Then you just want to get the nutrients in either side. You don't want to be messing with that. So that's different. But for 20-minute HIIT sessions or weight training, particularly when you're trying to target the belly fat, I would avoid it immediately either side. I'd even try and give 2 hours, but then after that, get it into you. Night time's a great time, weirdly, for a casein protein in particular, because it's so slow release, and great for bone density, this too, because it's so slow release. If you think about it, that fasting gap is the longest period we have without eating. So your body's more likely then to eventually go into a breakdown, if you like, of the lean tissue. So there's more likely to be calcium loss from the bones over that longer period. And a slow release protein like that is almost like it drip feeds it overnight, and it builds, because nighttime is also when we repair. Yeah. So the protein shakes can work super well before bed if you're looking to recover lean body mass.
Because that's going to help me, because I'm going to admit to a very naughty habit. I always, when I go to bed, I have my cup of Milo, which is sugar, and I should have it. And I wonder why I wake up at 3 o'clock going, hello, wait, what?
Hello world, I'm here. Yes. Yeah. Protein shake.
So I went to bed with a protein shake.
Yes.
I mean,
that would help. Then you get a double benefit. Yes.
I think the trick really is, you know, life is tough as it is. You just don't want to take all the goodness and the joy out of it. So find good replacements that are, you know, tasty or fun, whatever.
Yeah. And actually, that's where supplements come in. So in other words, because there's a couple of supplements that are superb for stress. I mean, there's quite a few supplements out there that actually are really helpful. And I think where supplements and protein shakes and the likes come in is people always ask, can you do it through diet or can you not do it through diet, depending on the way of phrasing it. And the answer is yes and no. You need to know a lot about nutrition and be prepared to go with it 100%, because people tend to say, can you not do it through nutrition, but actually aren't really changing the nutrition around at all to match their needs. They wouldn't be prepared to do it to that degree and get the quantities they need and the quality they need, and source it and spend the time sourcing it. Supplements are great for filling in those gaps that can be missing because of that, and they can fast track it if you like. They really can.
Because I think that's super important, because you've got to, I think sometimes these many diets or eating plans aren't sustainable because people forget who they actually are. And so they're all like energized at the beginning and like, I'm going to do this for a week or 2 weeks. And then they go back to the old habits. And then that can be quite dangerous, because actually you end up putting on more weight because your body is like, oh, I have been starved and now I'm getting food.
Well, I mean, nothing we're mentioning here, and I'm saying this very deliberately, because when I deal with clients, I have no interest in them feeling hungry or starving. None whatsoever. None. Nothing we're mentioning here is about cutting back calories. Nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing.
Eating more.
If anything, it's about eating more, just eating smartly.
Yes.
And equally, it's all very well saying, yes, but I like snacking and I'm a snacker. But that's back to your diesel versus petrol game.
Yeah.
Do that at your peril, well, quite frankly.
Yeah, and all honesty, that was me. I would prefer to sit at a meal that had like little bits, and you end up not eating very much, but I prefer that than having a full plate of food. Meal. I am reprogramming myself, but I'm making sure that I'm eating the things that I absolutely love. I mean, my favorite thing in the world is sitting down with a Greek salad and some grilled chicken, and I mean, literally, that could be like last meal on the planet type thing. I love that. But that's good for you. So
absolutely. I'm just looking at a question here about protein shakes using milk or non-dairy milk. Is the protein still properly absorbed? Really good question. There's no doubt that you get protein in dairy milk, and that can combine and work super well with the protein powder, but that doesn't mean you have to use it. You'll still get the benefit of the protein with a nut milk or an oat milk or that kind of thing. So, or even water. Quite frankly, you can put protein shakes into porridge and mix it through. So no, you don't need to do it with milk, but there's no question the protein in the milk can combine with the protein powder itself, and you get even more value out of it if you can do it with dairy milk, but not essential at all. But it's a great question. I like that when I saw that. Sorry.
Mine hasn't updated, so I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
I just know that they're sitting in front of me that I have to answer that one because that's a great question. It gets asked.
Well, so now you were talking about supplements. What would you suggest to have a really well-functioning cortisol level? So something that supports it. I know magnesium. I'm sure you're going to say magnesium.
The two I always recommend. Now, it's not saying these are the only ones out there, but these are the ones I find work in. Oh my gosh, I think I actually am saying this, and I'm genuinely asking myself, do I really believe this? And I'm thinking to myself, do I think, yeah, actually I do. I think in every case I've come across, I do think in every case, these two seem to wrap it. But there's others out there, and it's not knocking them. And I mean that because they have benefits too, but these two just seem to hit very hard and fast. Particularly perhaps with women of a certain age, and I mean by perimenopause, menopause, but not exclusively. It works for men too, quite frankly, just to be super clear. So yes, magnesium. We've got to think of magnesium, and I think we need to think of it as an essential. Once it hits to this point, and I just think we have to think of it as it's part and parcel of what we need. Magnesium is involved in about 600 processes in the body, as we mentioned the last time. It's essential for utilizing and absorbing calcium properly. And just as an aside, I have a question. I don't normally ask this, but I'm going to ask it out there anyway, and people can answer it for themselves. If somebody slammed a door or you heard a loud noise, do you jump? Now, this was a question as a nutritionist, when I studied nutrition, was actually placed as part of our training, funnily enough. Not the only thing, obviously, but it was just a tiny little part that was put in there with it. And the reason being is because jumpers, for want of a better word, are often low in calcium. Now, not always. There's other things that could be causing it. Of course there could. Of course there could. But it can be a sign of low calcium. Calcium helps build a myelin sheath that coats the lining of nerves. So if calcium's low, you'll be jumpy. And a lot of women going through perimenopause and menopause, not all in any shape or form, but you get quite a number that can be jumpy, and they wouldn't have been earlier in life, if you know what I mean. And that could be a sign of low calcium. It could be. So it's worth considering. Now, there's multiple things that help the absorption of calcium from your vitamin D, as we know, the magnesium, the sodium. There's all sorts of other things that help, but magnesium is one of the things that helps the body utilize calcium properly. And that is, calcium is one of the minerals that seems to get affected with perimenopause, menopause, as estrogen levels drop. It also is involved with the regulation of melatonin, which is the hormone. I always like to think of it as the opposite of cortisol. It's the one that puts you to sleep. So again, it's essential for that. It helps with getting rid of estrogen once it's been used, so it doesn't get recycled around the body, because you don't want recycled estrogen. And it helps with the reduction of cortisol levels directly. It helps with the reduction of blood sugar levels directly. So it's got a lot of influence on the body and the body's capacity to relax, as well as helping with the production of a thing called ATP, which helps our energy. So conversely, it helps you relax and helps your energy rise, which is almost exactly what you were describing. You kind of relaxed, but you had more energy. So you weren't running on adrenaline. It was a natural cellular energy, if you like, which is mitochondria in the cells produce your ATP. So, and also magnesium, just to be clear, helps your muscles relax. That's why we have a magnesium bath. It helps with everything.
Well, one of the ways I noticed, I was getting twitching muscles. Like I could watch them. I went, what is this? And I think this is where we spoke about this about 6 months ago. And it's like, well, you're obviously lacking magnesium.
That's a very big sign of low magnesium. Yeah, you need it. Absolutely. And think about it. Your heart, it absolutely requires magnesium to beat properly. It's essential. So you don't want to be low in it. You don't want to be low in it. So magnesium makes a big difference. It does seem to help the sleep. It does seem to help the body calm. It does seem to support the adrenals in so much as the cortisol levels and so on and so forth. So that makes a big difference. And the second one, which I have to say is my absolute favorite supplement. When I set up Strong Nutrients, I set up Strong Nutrients for the simple reason that I was getting all these supplements from different places and giving them, recommending clients take them effectively. So myself, my business partner at the time, we decided, let's just get a little nutrient brand together with the ones that are your favorites. Now, I was running gyms. So basically owned the gyms, was running gyms. So I was more initially thinking of them in terms of that. But certain things would come up way too often not to take seriously that may not be directly, but indirectly were affecting the shape, stress being one of them. And for me, oh my gosh, because I just wasn't seeing it being presented enough to people, and it works, is, well, what we now call a Strong Nutrients chill pill. Yes. She's got it. Chill pill. Here we go. Yes. Basically, it's primarily vitamin B5, pantothenic acid, calcium pantothenate, and that helps. Oh my gosh, that's another one that is involved in so many processes in the body. Again, if you think of the term calcium pantothenate, the pantothen bit means everywhere. But if you think about it, you've shampoo that's got a pantothen, that kind of theme to it. You've skin creams with that theme to it, because it's involved with the skin, it's involved with the hair, it's involved with so many things. But it also supports the adrenal glands. And we used to call it the happy vitamin when we studied nutrition because of its impact on mood. Energy levels go up, mood goes up, you just feel more relaxed, you sleep better. It just has a stabilizing effect, mainly because your adrenal glands are back doing what they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to on this crazy overdrive. And indirectly, it's great for the immune system too, because of the adrenals. We didn't tag and jump into this one, but we won't go into too much. But if your adrenals are in overdrive, that's when you're more likely going to get the ailments connected with stress, quite frankly, be that IBS right through just to we used to call it runner's flu or runner's cold, where people who put their bodies into too much stress with running used to get a cold that could last 3 months. That's adrenals that are just on a bit of an overdrive. So that's where the B5 or the chill pill can come in. But the combination of those two, it's like everything just goes
exactly. And the system becomes a little bit like, more balanced, and we need more balance.
More itself.
I did check that there's a question, which B vitamin?
Now, that's a very good question. So here we're talking specifically about vitamin B5 as opposed to the rest. Now, all the B vitamins have benefit, and they're involved with the nervous system and everything else, so are useful if you're under stress. Now, they really are. But B5 specifically seems to be the one that helps support the adrenal glands, which is the one in chill pill. So it's you're taking quite a high amount compared to what you get in a complex. And it's very specifically for this side. So it doesn't cover the need for B6 or B12. They're different. They're working on a different game, if you like. It's the B5. And incredibly, you notice the difference. I find and I tell people, watch for it, give it between 3 to 10 days. Honestly, I think in every case, it's between 1 and 3 days. It doesn't take 3 to 10. If you drink coffee, I do. I like my coffee. And I'm not going to sit here and think coffee's good for us. And no, there's loads of research that says there are benefits in coffee, and maybe there are. I like to think there are just because I like my coffee. But I'm simply put. But for me, I said it earlier on that caffeine and cortisol to me are very similar kind of things, if you like. I think caffeine hits the adrenals in a very similar way too much cortisol does. I don't think that aspect of the coffee is very good for us. I personally find if I'm going to be drinking coffee, now this is just me, I take the chill pill. I take the B5 because forget about all the other stress. Yeah, if I'm going to be sort of annoying it a little bit with the caffeine. Now, you could say to me, you're better off not drinking the coffee. And I go, yes, you're right, but I like my coffee. So that's just why I'm saying this. But if you do drink coffee, then I think you should just be considering that. For me, the difference with the chill pill, and particularly when you combine it with the magnesium, is I know if I need it because I don't necessarily get very stressed. I get airplane sleep, where I don't find I drop asleep deep enough when I'm getting stressed.
Right.
And I find when that's happening, I go, oh, and then when I add in the children magnesium, that just goes, it's like you drop.
Because you need to go into that deeper sleep to fully rest and recover.
Recover, exactly, exactly. Whereas, as I call it, airplane sleep isn't quite good enough.
That and actually, I find sometimes it's better to stay awake than to go
Almost.
into airplane sleep.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I from those, I actually will wake up feeling
Yeah.
worse. It's like,
I would believe it. Yes. I mean, you're better off just doing a relaxation meditation type of thing and going out of it properly. Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I used to, what is really funny, and before I discovered strong nutrients and your actual chill pill, I used to tell people, I was like, I'm just going to take a chill pill. You know, I didn't realize there was an actual tablet that was perfect for me. So I was delighted to find it because it has helped. But I mean, I can tell when I've run out on my magnesium because I start getting muscle twitches, and you know, you can start feeling like, you know, and that's never good.
It's not. And there's no need to feel it. It just is a sign of an imbalance. Great thing about supplements, if you ever notice when you read labels, they say normalizes or helps the normal functioning of. They do this in a lot of supplement labels. A great way to know if you need one is if you take it and it makes a difference, you needed it. It's not a drug. It's not artificially doing anything. Your body's utilizing a nutrient for a function, which is therefore making you feel better. So yes, if you take it and you feel a difference, you needed it, in my view anyway, simply put.
And I remember you mentioning to me that with the magnesium, when you were aware that you were going through really tough times or stress times, to actually increase your dosing.
You can, absolutely you can. With magnesium, if you take too much, it'll just, quite frankly, it'll run through you. So reduce it back, simply put. If you find you're getting muscle cramps, because I get some people say they're getting muscle cramps, but they take magnesium. And in that case, just try increasing the dose and see if that wraps it. Because if it does, then it was still that you weren't getting enough. If you take extra calcium, you'll need more magnesium, for example. So you might find you're taking a certain form of magnesium, you're taking 200 mg a day and it works beautifully, and then suddenly it doesn't. And that could just be because you've increased cheese intake randomly. Because your body needs more.
It's also really good in your vitamin D, right?
Yes. So no, vitamin D, yes. Vitamin D now is essential for that calcium uptake. Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
But magnesium is important for vitamin D. That's what I think. Am I wrong?
They're quite different, but there will be a touch of synergy going on with them.
Well, that's the thing. Everything is supposed to work, but the thing is, it's so unbalanced now that, you know, everything's up.
There is a synergy going on, and there is, and this is a whole other conversation of how much of everything do we really need, and that's where it can get slightly more muddled.